The saga continues in Stillwater as another player enters the portal, and then a staff member is suspended indefinitely. Thankfully, the head coach search is still going, and a pretty popular name is continuing to just hang around.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayOState. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can bet just $5. If it's a winner, you'll get $300 back in bonus bets to use all across the app. Make sure that you head on over to FanDuel.com to download today to get squared away. Ladies and gentlemen, the coaching search continues to heat up. And just like we had previously discussed, how there has to be at least some merit to some of these Vegas numbers. So the fact that John Gruden was number 2 and then he fell off pretty drastically probably indicates to the Vegas insiders that, yeah, he's off the table for one reason or another. There was another name that by now I assume would probably kind of falter in the ranking pecking order, but he is still there. The man that previously was the head coach at UCF and had the multiple 9-win seasons under his belt, now the offensive coordinator at Florida State, Gus Malzahn, is a name that is continuing to hang around. And it appears as though there's at least a couple donors of very heavy influence that are very interested in at least continuing to explore this potential avenue of Gus Malzahn being the head man at Oklahoma State. Listen, there's a ton of things that it would have accomplished. I would argue that there's some things that potentially it wouldn't accomplish. But from a namesake, that is somebody that does carry a big stick. So if Oklahoma State, once again, is trying to make a splash in this hire, from name recognition purposes, Gus Malzahn would accomplish that. Being part of some of the Cam Newton, Auburn, Heisman Trophy, national championship runs, being a head coach and making a run, it is a pretty big ordeal. And again, he was successful at UCF, had a multiple 9-win seasons, and obviously faltered there at the latter half. And now Scott Frost moves back in. He takes over as the offensive coordinator. And some people thought it was a surprise, but he's got a coaching tree to Mike Norvell. He is one of the reasons that Mike Norvell has been elevated to the levels that he is now. So it does make sense to me that Mike Norvell would like to return the favor and say, hey, you taught me a lot. Why don't you come over to Florida State, leave UCF, and reestablish yourself to some degree? I think that it would be kind of cool from a storyline perspective to see Gus Malzahn back in the Big 12, getting another opportunity. The recruiting has always been a strength of his. Offensive systems have always been a strength of him, and we remember that back when he was even at Tulsa. His success at Auburn is something that you have to pay attention to. And again, he had a couple 9-win seasons at UCF, but the latter half of that, experience at UCF obviously kind of trailed off. And the only knock, I guess I could say to some degree on Gus Malzahn is his in-game management. I remember being even back at Auburn, there were some head-scratching decisions and moments that didn't necessarily make a ton of sense, whether it be punting at the wrong time or not kicking a field goal when it's within range, not calling a timeout or something to that effect. Those always seem to be the hiccups for Gus Malzahn. And I think that's even reminiscent of his previous stop at UCF. They were a pretty good ball club more often than not. They had a lot of talent, but sometimes in the close games, Gus Malzahn would make a decision that would cause them to end up behind the sticks or behind the 8-ball. That is something that I don't know that you're going to uptick after X amount of years already being in the coaching industry and being a head coach at multiple stops now, including the assistant head coach stop at Tulsa as well. There should be a considerable amount that Gus Malzahn's been able to learn in the game management that I do have a little bit of reluctancy towards. But again, the offensive innovations are typically something that is going to be beneficial in Stillwater, Oklahoma. We don't always get the big meat and tater offensive linemen, defensive linemen, but getting top-notch running backs and wide receivers, and even to some degree quarterbacks, has never really been a massive obstacle in Stillwater, Oklahoma. under somebody like Gus Malzahn, that would likely be much of the same. And I think it's easy to see that we do have currently better facilities than UCF. We have a better connection to success than UCF. We have a lot of tradition and history, especially under Mike Gundy, that he can utilize. And there's going to be a capitalization moment right now by the next hire for the donor base. If there were some donors that were somewhat reluctant to give money when Mike Gundy was still there, that is no longer on the table. So if the hire is exciting and that Gus Malzahn will have more opportunities in Stillwater, Oklahoma, as opposed to what he would have done at UCF. And again, much like the John Gruden thing, I'd assumed, right, after a week or so, had some time to breathe, that maybe this conversation would be lessened a little bit because he is an Arkansas alum and the Arkansas job is open. I know Petrino's there, and Petrino's also got a ton of deep Arkansas connections, and perhaps he could be auditioning to take over for Sam Pittman right now. If that's the case, then it does make sense while this Gus Malzahn conversation is still hanging about. The fact that we've got some donors that are interested in this is at least intriguing, and it does accomplish some of the recruiting things that we need, the namesake that we need to make a splash hire, somebody that, typically speaking, isn't going to allow things to get too crazy, and he's going to bring a fun, innovative offense that's going to attract talent, and it's a name that I think would bring some former Cowboys back and that maybe have transferred in the last year or two. So I think there are a lot of benefits to the name of Gus Malzahn continuously being attached to the Oklahoma State position. But, I do have some questions in regard to just game management. And that's always been the biggest question for me as it pertained to Gus Malzahn. That's really been his only Achilles heel that's pretty visible is, last second decision making in tight ball games have always been the best in his resume. But other than that, he would be able to bring in a nice staff. The recruiting would get better. The offensive capabilities would stay at least, what the acceptance level is in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And we don't have a head coach buyout to contend with. So I think there are a lot of reasons why there is still some smoke to the Gus Malzahn being the next head man to replace Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. I don't know if it's going to turn into fire, but it's still up there and it's still a possibility. It's also a possibility for you to get out and move and be moved, which means, we're talking about Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who just do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From the footwork to breath work, the athletes deduce what every detail, so does Mazda. Mazda brings that same intentionality to every single craft that they model. You can make everyday drives feel more like an exhilarating experience. From the smooth handling and intuitive controls, the all-wheel drive coming standard in almost every crossover SUV, you can drive through almost anything with confidence in almost any season. Like some of our players who do, in fact, sweat every detail, Mazda is going to allow you to do the same because when you make every move count, impossible then becomes irrelevant. Get with Mazda today, where you can move and be moved by a Mazda. Make sure that you're managing your finances as well as physically possible with Monarch, because not all of us can name all of our financial accounts or even necessarily what they're all worth. Whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, if you don't have the full picture, you're going to leave money on the table and you're going to not give yourself that sense of security that Monarch money can provide for you. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is here for you today. They're going to do the heavy lifting for you so you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally, feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can identify things that you need to get better at, and Monarch can help you, whether it's saving or you've got an investment allocation that needs to be discovered, or you didn't know where it was supposed to go, whether it's a 401k. Maximizing investments, increasing your saving rate, easily reviewing finances with your partner or financial advisor. These are all things that Monarch Money can help you accomplish. So don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at monarchmoney.com. in your browser for half off your first year. That is 50% off your first entire year. If you go to monarchmoney.com, you'll be able to see that and accomplish your financial goals. Make sure that you use that code, Locked On College, all one word, to take that financial freedom that you've always needed with Monarch Money. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, DeAndre Boykins. DeAndre Boykins was the North Carolina transfer who had like 36 games played, almost 15 starts coming into this Oklahoma State season. Likely was supposed to be a catalyst to help in the transitionary period for some of the coaches as we eased our way into the season, which also likely means there was an NIL component that equaled somebody that you would go get out of North Carolina that would have been a starter at UNC this particular season. For whatever reason, maybe there were some hiccups here and there. Maybe there were some lingering injuries that popped up here and there. Nonetheless, DeAndre Boykins decided that he was going to take this redshirt opportunity, enter the transfer portal, but not after. Evidently, there was a dust-up on the sidelines between him and former Cowboy legendary defensive end, now player development specialist, Rashetti Jones. And you know what? There's always going to be a little bit of a discrepancy between whose idea it is to take a red shirt and which coaches don't think that it's a good idea or which coaches are maybe encouraging it. Maybe there's always going to be a little bit of a disconnect. And at the end of the day, Rashetti Jones is a Cowboy. Like, he's a loyal and true individual that probably greatly appreciates everything that Mike Gundy was able to do for him, not only as a coach in recruiting, but obviously, from a staffing perspective as well. And it's really hard to get down on Rashetti Jones. Now, if DeAndre Boykins or Richetti himself, right, they come out and they say verbatim what took place, it'll be a little bit difficult to choose a side. But if Richetti is a diehard Cowboy and DeAndre Boykins was unhappy with the situation, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that perhaps DeAndre Boykins, whether he agreed or disagreed with the red shirt, there had to be a designation or a conversation that DeAndre Boykins wasn't happy with. And it doesn't mean that he was in the wrong. It doesn't mean that Oklahoma State was in the right. But clearly something transpired that led him to believe that, transferring was going to be the best option. If there was some words exchanged, and if there was some negative things to say about Oklahoma State, or even to some degree, what if something negative was said about Mike Gundy? Or what if some of the defensive players are still lingering with some animosity about some of the offensive players? Rashetti Jones is the type of dude that's probably going to stomp that out pretty quickly. Now, in today's age, you got to be careful about how you address the situation. You got to be careful about the verbiage that you use whenever you are undressing somebody, as they say. But whenever you're dressing somebody down verbally, it's different nowadays. It's a different landscape. As Mike Gundy would say, and he's not entirely off kilter here, but this is a little bit of a softer generation. So I do think that there's likely something that transpired that caused Rashetti Jones to bleed orange maybe too much and fly off the handle and say some things that obviously DeAndre Boykins didn't appreciate, but somebody at the staff level at Oklahoma State or admin level, they obviously didn't appreciate whatever transpired either. So again, you could deduce potentially that DeAndre Boykins potentially said something negative, whether it was, again, red shirt or transfer or Gundy or the firing or the offense. Could be a multitude of things that in this tumultuous situation that Rashetti Jones finds himself in, it's easy to see that he probably flew off the handle. If he perceived something that DeAndre Boykins said or did as a slight towards Oklahoma State or a slight towards Cowboy culture, it's really hard to fault Rashetti Jones if that is the scenario in which allowed DeAndre Boykins to get in the portal and Rashetti Jones to be suspended indefinitely. Because, there's no denying that Rashetti Jones is an integral part of the Cowboy culture. He's one of the alumnus that was able to come back and kind of help with the connection to some of the younger guys with the Cowboy culture in its infancy to some degree. Richetti was part of the building blocks for what the next round of Cowboys is supposed to look like. So to me, it's hard to fault Rashetti Jones for wearing his heart on his sleeve, especially if his heart is pumping full of orange Kool-Aid 24/7. This place is special to him. It means a little bit more. The locker room mentality that Oklahoma State typically goes out on the field with does mean a little bit more. And Rashetti Jones wasn't making big-time NIL dollar bills. So it's easy to at least fathom that it's possible that Rashetti Jones' emotions and what used to be a good way probably showed out in this scenario. And, there's going to be some players where it's smart to redshirt. There's going to be some players that it's smart to redshirt them to stay at Oklahoma State next season. But there's obviously going to be some that disagree with that particular designation. And to me, it's really hard to see the other side of this coin where potentially Rashetti Jones did just something so egregious that it equaled an indefinite suspension. Suspended, sure. Reprimanded, chastised, sure. But and unless, something does matriculate out from a news perspective about this exact scenario, it's hard not to rock with Rashetti. Because he does take this personal. He does now recognize that there's at least a chance that this alma mater dream position that he currently has is a little less stable right now. As every single coach on that staff undoubtedly feels that way. But not all of them are former Cowboys that were here when the Cowboy culture was first really starting to come into definition. So if you're a player that says the wrong things or does the wrong things or doesn't completely buy in, or it's easy to see a former hardcore loyal and true alum just to fly off and basically say, I'm done with this ridiculousness. So hopefully it gets resolved. And hopefully this isn't something that is viewed negatively for Rashetti Jones moving forward. I don't think that it will, but there's always a potential. For them to suspend him indefinitely, it had to be something that was at least teetering on that line of acceptability, that at least temporarily it's unacceptable. However, suspended indefinitely basically usually means that you're fired. So we shall see how that saga continues to unfold. But not all's lost. It's not like Oklahoma State has everything around them torched to flames. I don't think that's the case, which is why I think Arizona needs to at least pay a little bit of attention to what just happened and what is currently happening right now in Stillwater. FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your betting needs. I know you know that. Sometimes we need some slight reprieve from Cowboy football. The NFL season is here to help us out. And the NFL season gives you an offer from FanDuel that you're not going to want to miss out on. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if it's a winner. You pick the bet, put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 back in bonus bets that you can use all across the app. It makes watching the games much more exciting because you have an investment level now. So whether it's something little just to stay into the action, or you're going to want to build a parlay, player props, or just follow along with the game live betting, doesn't matter. If you're a casual or you love the statistical portion of it, FanDuel makes every game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Get your investment level up. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. FanDuel's the bee's knees for all of your betting needs, so get with them as soon as possible. Before we do finally get to this segment 3 so we can skedaddle out of here, it's time for you to go support your local businesses. This episode is partially brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spot runs on Square. There are certain neighborhood businesses that make it feel like a neighborhood. Those are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's a sports bar dedicated to your favorite team, or a spot with the best wings, or the best game day atmosphere, or the beloved local chain from right down the road that you've always rooted for. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the entire neighborhood can thrive together. I go right down the road to Safeway. Matter of fact, I got to go get some doggo food here pretty quickly. And that is my neighborhood spot, right? It's a spot where you feel welcome as soon as you go in. They know your rituals. They know what you're buying. They know what you're here for. And that support is precisely what makes a community feel more like the neighborhoods that we all want to be a part of. So when you show up as a community, it can mean big business for local business owners. That is money well spent in your neighborhood. So make sure you stay in the neighborhood and go utilize somebody with Square today. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go use square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot right now. You'll be happy that you did. Utilize Square so you can be a part of seeing the neighborhood better. All right, before we do skedaddle on off of here, briefly, I think Arizona needs to be paying attention. Now, surely what happened against Baylor probably had an antenna or two prop up in Arizona country that, this isn't the same team that we did see the first 3 games. Offensively, they showed some fight. They showed some ability to schematically make things at least somewhat complex. And then now you have a player being suspended indefinitely, and you have, Demarion Thomas, the transfer from Vanderbilt. He's in the portal. Now you have North Carolina transfer. DeAndre Boykins is in the portal. We already lost Miami transfer Zaquan Patterson earlier. We lost a couple Cowboys that returned earlier in the portal. And so externally, it might appear as though Oklahoma State is in even more turmoil. But if we can look at the offensive performance and find hope, now that Todd Grantham is gone and Clint Bowen's in charge of the defense, it's possible that we could see something somewhat reminiscent. It's possible that there was a disconnect between the offensive players and the defensive players. And now you've removed some of the barriers or the reasonings for that. You could have a more cohesive team now. You could have a team that's that's willing to battle a little bit harder. And if we can fight up defensively like we were able to show against Baylor, we could put up a competent performance offensively. If the camaraderie is better and the cohesiveness in the locker room is now getting better because you're having more Cowboy culture dudes that buy in, that bleed orange, that believe in everything that Oklahoma State provides, regardless of who the coach is, you're seeing more of those guys play against Baylor. If you're seeing even more of those guys play against Arizona, if I'm the Wildcats, I don't assume this is a W. 2 weeks ago, yeah, probably Arizona wins by 10 plus. But there's sometimes something to be said about the locker room buying in to something different. And this is different. And Doug Meacham is trying to prove a point. Doug Meacham is trying to put on display that I can be the next head coach at Oklahoma State. Worst case scenario, he's trying to put on display that whichever coach is the next dude in Stillwater, they need to examine very heavily whether Doug Meacham should be retained as an offensive coordinator or, even a wide receivers coach. I mean, we have a very small sample size, but it's been pretty promising so far with Doug Meacham in charge. And I'm excited to see what the defense could now look like with Todd Grantham being gone. Because that aggressiveness, that tenacity, that physicality we were rocking and fall with, it didn't work. So maybe more cohesiveness is what this locker room needs. And if we get it, and you can couple a competent offensive performance against Baylor with now something likewise on the defensive side of the ball against Arizona, the emergence of Trent Allen, the health of Rodney Fields, seeing Shamar Rigby ball out, seeing Terrell Davis continue to make some things happen, Josh Ford get a touchdown, Sam Jackson being not only a wrinkle, but a very crucial piece of the offensive system moving forward. There's a lot for Arizona to pay attention to. But don't get lost in the, they just lost another coach. They just had another couple big-time transfers leave. Because the transfers that we had, clearly, for the most part, they weren't getting it done. So maybe we go to somebody who's not as fast or as big or has lower body fat percentage or whatever. Maybe he's 3 inches shorter. But it means more. That's what we should see against Arizona. So, Arizona Wildcat country. Should you win? Yes. But I think there's enough happening to be concerned. Baylor fans were somewhat concerned just because of the unknown factor. And they had right to be, because offensively, we put a performance up that was good enough to compete with Baylor. The problem was defensively, we didn't do that. Right? And you can't, as a defensive coordinator, it's probably not wise to try to change things up a little bit too late. I think that's another thing that Gundy talked about in the Oregon performance, that we tried to do too many things. We were supposed to simplify things for Tulsa. That clearly did not happen. We simplified things offensively for Baylor, but defensively, the complexity was still a major issue. So this isn't Clint Bones' first rodeo, which is why if I'm Arizona, I'm definitely not sleeping easy on this version of the Cowboys. Alrighty, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. Go check out my X, because the Kappa ticket giveaway live announcement stuff, where we're going to break it down more in detail, it's on X right now. So go check out Kappa. Go check out my X account, OK State Probs, Keaton Hargett. That'll be able to get you at least started, so you're ahead of the curve whenever we do make some of the meat and taters announcements for the ticket giveaway for homecoming. We're praying for a night game, and I'll tell you why when we do go live. But get yourself prepared to win these tickets ahead of time. At all day, O State. For me, OK State, OKST, capital OKST, capital P, ROBS for Keaton. Go check out our X accounts, and that'll get you ahead of the curve. Already, y'all. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Lockdown, Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast to people out there. You're everything that makes this work. I appreciate what you do. Go do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. Alrighty, y'all. Later, taters.